Russia will, we understand, continue their attacks. They are now more openly mocking the peace process, because if you look at the way they are commenting on the peace proposals, that's literally, taking a mockery of the efforts of the US, of Ukraine, because they're just saying, well, we'll just have everything and you get nothing, right? That's the art of the deal, the Kremlin style. But that's not going to work like that. And we're seeing that there is a growing understanding of this reality in the White House. And I think that will probably encourage them to consider more things like economic sanctions, like sanctioning the shadow fleet that enables Russian energy trade. That will the US will also consider perhaps providing Ukraine with more powerful weapons.
Hello and welcome to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. And this time we are joined again from Kyiv by Yuriy Sak, who is advisor to the Minister of Strategic Industries, formerly advisor to the Minister of Defence of Ukraine. Yuriy, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us on Frontline. Now, the long-awaited and much negotiated minerals deal with the US has finally been signed. What does it mean for Ukraine and US commitment to your country?
Good afternoon, Kate. I think this deal means a lot because we have to view it within the wider context of this negotiating process. And there have been some serious sticking points along the way, and this was one of them. So there's been a lot of effort put into the negotiating process for this specific part of the arrangement for the peace process, right? The critical minerals deal. And now that it is signed, I think Ukraine has sent again a very clear signal to the White House, as well as to the, all other partners of Ukraine, that we are serious about our commitment to peace. We are, realistic about how to proceed. And at the moment, I think the signing of this deal actually opens a path for further steps, which we hope will lead to a lasting and enduring peace. And I would like to stress that in the statement issued by the White House, one thing I've already noticed that is kind of overlooked by those who comment on this today, but the statement states very clearly that the deal is signed and sends a clear signal to Russia that the United States of America are committed to developing partnership relationships with a sovereign and independent Ukraine. Now, that is in itself a very strong statement, which indicates that the US continues to be our strategic partner. And on our side, we value this partnership and we look forward to further steps.
Early days, I know, but what is the collective reaction in Kyiv at the moment to this news?
Well, in Kyiv, we knew that this deal will be signed, and of course, at different stages of the negotiating process, which I think is normal, because it is a deal about business transactions in the future. But this agreement sets up an investment fund, and the reason why it took so long actually to sign this deal is because at different stages we had to speak to our partners in the US to ensure that this will be an equal partnership, to ensure that whatever is signed is in line with our constitution, is in line with our Euro-Atlantic aspirations in terms of our future integration into the EU, for example. And we wanted to ensure that by signing this deal, Ukrainian people will not be put at a disadvantage. So what we have signed now is an agreement between equal partners who are committed to developing a prosperous Ukraine in the future. And of course, this will be then hopefully supplemented by further security guarantees, not necessarily all of them from the US, but from other Ukraine's partners. So yes, at this stage, it's a promising sign. And, put simply, it's one sticking point out of the way. Now let's focus on a ceasefire and then lasting and enduring peace.
Yes, and to that point on the ceasefire, how do you think it might play out having signed this deal? What influence do you think it might have? I mean, do you think Donald Trump will negotiate more favorably towards Zelensky now and towards Ukraine now, and finally use some leverage on Putin and on the Kremlin, which has already said only this week that peace won't come as soon as Trump wants?
Well, of course, we hope that the White House and Donald Trump will continue to adhere to his own formula, which is peace through force. Of course, US has leverage that it can deploy to force Russia to the negotiating table because, from where we see it, we are hopeful, but at the same time skeptical. We are hopeful because we know about the existence of these leverages in the US. We are skeptical because every night Ukraine continues to be a target of missile and drone attacks. Just last night, we had another massive attack on the city of Odessa. 2 civilian people were killed, many more injured, and this happens on a daily basis. So there are no signs of any commitment to peace from Russia, which absolutely is the opposite from our side.
Yes, and obviously the Kremlin will be a little bit shaken by the news. I'm sorry to hear about these attacks, and it is dreadful that when we talk about these things, and well, there's so much talk about peace, the fighting, the attacks do continue. What do you think the Kremlin will be doing now? Because it will be looking at this deal and wondering how to react and how it can now take the upper hand and influence Trump. They've got reason to be worried, haven't they? And Dmitry Peskov has said Russia won't do any peace deal the way Trump wants it. What do you expect their next move to be?
Well, I don't think they will change their tactics. We have reports from our general staff and from our top military command that they're preparing for new attacks. And now that the climate changes, the weather conditions will probably, they think, will be more favorable for them in terms of more attacks. Of course, they will continue their friendship with countries like Iran and North Korea. They will continue to be supplied with missiles and drones from their partners in crime. And I don't think we will see in the coming weeks or months any decrease in their military activity on their side. But what we have to also think about and just reflect on is this. If we look at how, because Russia knows and knew this from the very first day of the large-scale invasion, that for it to prevail on the battlefield, it needs to stop Ukraine's partners from providing us with support. Now, of course, Ukrainian people are fighting heroically. The army is really innovative, and we're fighting a smart war. But at the same time, we are dependent on the support from our partners. Even though, having said that, at the moment we have actually built up our own defense industry to such an extent that more than 40% of all the weapons used by the Ukrainian army on the front lines is domestically produced. So that's another, factor that Russia is taking into account when planning their future offensives. But Russia will, we understand, continue their attacks. They are now more openly mocking the peace process, because if you look at the way they are commenting on the peace proposals, that's literally, taking a mockery of the efforts of the US, of Ukraine, because they're just saying, well, we'll just have everything and you get nothing, right? That's the art of the deal, the Kremlin style. But that's not going to work like that. And we're seeing that there is a growing understanding of this reality in the White House. And I think that will probably encourage them to consider more things like economic sanctions, like sanctioning their shadow fleet that enables Russian energy trade. That will the US will also consider perhaps providing Ukraine with more powerful weapons. So we'll have to see how that goes. But for now, hopeful and skeptical. That's the kind of situation we're in.
A mixture, yes. And I mean, earlier this week, the US had yet again threatened to walk away from the peace negotiations. Do you think that this movement in terms of the business deal on the rare minerals makes that less likely? Does that give you cause for hope? Because Trump is clearly feels like he's made some progress with negotiations with Ukraine, but he is clearly losing patience that there is intransigence on this peace deal. or a ceasefire deal?
Yes, I think overall, now that the deal is signed, it will be much more difficult for the White House to sort of blame the lack of progress on Ukraine, put simply, because everything that was proposed by the White House, after discussions, we've agreed to. So we just the same way as the US, we are in favor of an unconditional ceasefire, a 30-day ceasefire, which should pave the way for a more lasting and enduring peace. We have signed the critical minerals deal, which will go towards it's a mutually beneficial deal. So at the moment, there is nothing from the Ukraine and the US side that should stop us from sort of pushing forward with the peace process. It's just Russia who is now putting the spanner in the works. And we hope that the result, of course, will be at some point that the US will have to consider a different strategy, a different negotiating strategy, because the art of the deal, we have seen one side of the art of the deal. I think time is coming for all to see the other side of the deal, where more pressure is put on the aggressor.
So you think that actually is a real possibility now that Donald Trump will actually be prepared to put sanctions on Russia, increase sanctions on Russia?
Well, look, unless they are ready for this peace process to stall, this will have to be a mixture of diplomacy and pressure. And of course, we have to be aware of the fact that there are many things which are said and done behind closed doors, and we don't actually get to see or read or hear them. But at the same time, it's too early to kind of give up. And I think Russia is overall in a pretty bad economic state. They understand this. Time is not actually on their side. So they are being degraded, that they're not gaining anything on the battlefield. They have lost tens of thousands of soldiers just in the last couple of months. We have degraded their military capability by using our deep strike drones. We are targeting their ammunition depots. We are targeting their oil refineries. So in essence, I think the momentum is here for the Ukrainian-US partnership and the European partnership to actually apply pressure on Russia and force them to consider this more seriously.
And as we speak, we are now on the fourth truce proposal. This one is the second unilaterally declared by Putin for 3 days on the 8th of May. It's been described as absurd by the US Special Envoy to Ukraine. He's right, isn't he?
Well, Kate, look, it's like the Kremlin is saying to the world, okay, we are committing a genocide, but, we will have a party and our friends will come and we don't want to spoil the party. So let's just put the genocide on pause for a little while, a couple of days, and then we will resume killing Ukrainian people, destroying Ukrainian cities and, ruining the lives of millions of Ukrainian people in our country. So that's how it sounds. We have said on our side that, look, if you're serious about your commitment to peace, if you really are serious about what you yourself say, that you want to achieve peace, let's declare an unconditional, comprehensive ceasefire on land, on sea, and in the sky, and let's start talking about, how we are going to solve this diplomatically. So the proposal of a 3-day ceasefire, 3-day parade ceasefire, is not perceived seriously. But of course, on our side, every day, Kate, is, every day without shells flying and missiles flying means more Ukrainian lives saved. So we are happy even for 3 days ceasefire. But of course, for the peace process to be efficient, we need to talk about 30 days minimum.
Only last week, Russia launched the deadliest attack on Kyiv in 9 months. Numerous people killed and injured. It has since launched a massive drone attack on Kharkiv and is making advances in the northeast of the region. It's in Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. Clearly, it's trying to capitalize on these delaying tactics. How much is it achieving?
This is very irrational because on the one hand, at the same time when top US representatives are in Russia talking to the leadership of the Kremlin about the peace process, they are launching massive missile strike. Look, since last Sunday, Russia has launched more drones on Ukraine than in the whole of May of 2024, a year ago. So they have actually intensified ridiculously their attacks. Of course, this means that our air defense systems sometimes are not capable of actually deflecting all of these attacks. That means that, the our need in more advanced air defense systems is growing, and we have actually said this to the US. We are actually happy to consider buying the Patriot systems, for example, from the US, by using the frozen assets of the Russian Federation. So it's irrational because but Russia is irrational overall. I mean, they say one thing and they do absolutely opposite tactics on the ground. So, but again, they're just showing to the world their true face. They're not interested in peace. Russia wants Ukraine to disappear from the map of Europe. Russia wants the future generations of Ukrainians to stop calling ourselves Ukrainians. They want this to be the same people, the same sort of slave mentality. And this is what we are fighting for. We have to remember that with all the critical mineral deals signed, for us, it is still about survival. It is about values. And I think this is how it is for the most of Europe, for example, because, everybody understands very well that it's not about just territories in eastern Ukraine or Crimea, right? It's about Russia trying to superimpose the tyrannical regime on first Ukraine, and then hopefully they want to extend it further west to the sphere of influence of the former Soviet Union. And we're doing our best to stop that from happening. And I think if it hasn't happened so far, fingers crossed it won't happen at all.
And on the subject of the Russian occupied territories and on Crimea, Putin is sticking to the demands that he wants them to be recognized as Russian. Do you accept that Ukraine may have to temporarily give up land for peace?
We are realistic, Kate, about the situation on the ground. We know very well that militarily we're not currently in a position to deoccupy our territories. We simply cannot retake Crimea. We cannot expel Russian forces from parts of the Kherson and Zaporizhia region. And this is why it's a very difficult compromise for us, because as you will remember, well, not so long ago, we spoke only in terms of completely deoccupying our territories. But look, we know that it's not possible at this stage. So while we will never recognize Russian claim to those territories, because they have been illegally annexed, they have been illegally occupied through a crime of aggression, which is an internationally recognized crime. So, but for us, it is also important to achieve peace and hope for a chance to reclaim our territories through diplomatic means in the future. So this is what all our efforts are aimed at now. And temporarily, yes, but we will never admit that Russia legally can claim those territories.
What can you tell us about Ukraine's presence in Kursk and Belgorod at the moment? Because the Kremlin had been trying to spin a line that Ukrainian forces have been completely pushed out.
Well, yes, they have been pushing and they have been attacking relentlessly, and they have been using the North Korean soldiers, as you have seen now, because they've openly admitted to it in Kursk region. And they have been lying again because while the situation is difficult, it's not the way they said it, right? They said that they've liberated it entirely, that they've crushed all our forces. That just doesn't correspond with reality. And, all the operational secrecy demands that we do not reveal any further information. But, we've said this so many times. Russia cannot be trusted, neither at the negotiating table or when they're reporting about the situation on the ground. But it also indicates that, Russian leadership probably feels under pressure. They need to somehow explain to their own people, why this has lasted for such a long time, and why the Ukrainian forces are still on the Russian territory, and why the Russian army is still not able to regain even full control of Donetsk and Luhansk region. So they don't have anything to actually present to their own people and justify the staggering losses that they're taking in this war. So this is why they are embellishing things, they're lying about things. And we just know that, we know this, our partners know this, and it's probably just Russian people who buy this propaganda.
How much pressure do you think Putin will feel from the killing of the Russian general in Moscow by a car bomb on the 25th of April? Because this was a deputy chief of the main operations directorate of Russia's army, according to an obituary, and prepared reports for Putin on the situation in Ukraine.
Okay, according to the Geneva Conventions on the Rule and Traditions of War, Ukraine is entitled to target anyone who is responsible for prosecuting this aggressive war against our country. We have carried out certain special operations in the past, and if we can take out those people who are responsible for killing our children, it will continue, and we have a moral and legal right to do that. And we'll have to see how that sort of impacts other members of the Russian military command. But of course, it does send a signal that you can run, but you cannot hide.
So Ukrainian special forces did carry out this attack, did they?
Well, they didn't. Our special forces didn't say clearly that we admit to this specific attack. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll have to see. But the overall strategy of the Ukrainian special forces is to, disable Russian military command and reach them wherever we can.
I'd really just interested to get your perspective on the changes that have been announced by the Defence Minister Rustem Umerov to his department. 2 new appointments, 1 promotion and 1 departure. He cites strategic steps to strengthen Ukraine's defence capabilities. What's needed?
Well, at this stage, we are primarily focused on building up our own defense industry base, and the Ministry of Strategic Industries, which I'm part of, and the Ministry of Defense are both working very hard in this direction. So actually, one of the promotions to which you're referring to is Sergei Boyev, who used to be responsible for the international aspect at the Ministry of Strategic Industries, and now he moved to pretty much do this job within the Ministry of Defense. Now we have been able in the last 2 years to triple the output of our defense industry. I've already said that our soldiers are using almost 40+% of the weapons produced in Ukraine. We are setting up joint ventures with global weapons manufacturers. We have an unrivaled and unprecedented innovation potential when it comes to the modern warfare, drones, land drones, naval drones, aerial drones, deep strike drones, all kinds of drones. So all of this requires that the sort of management structure within the MOD reflects this new reality, and the people who have been promoted, they are very well placed to actually help us, accelerate these processes, strike better partnerships. We are working very hard with the European partners who are also now concerned about their defense future, and they're building up their own defense industries. So the international aspect of cooperation is really important, and these are the kind of changes that these latest moves reflect.
I just want to ask you about the planned joint exercises with Russian and Belarusian military in Belarus this summer. President Zelensky has said it may be used as a cover for gathering forces for potential military aggression. How great is that risk, and is there anything that can be done to reduce it?
On the one hand, we probably shouldn't read too much into it, but on the other hand, this is exactly how the large-scale invasion of Ukraine began, with the large-scale military exercises, including along the borders between Ukraine and Belarus. So we are seeing that this is already impacting our Western neighbors, like countries who have the border with Belarus, and Russia is unpredictable, so we'll have to be, we and our partners have to be prepared for everything. And it's, if time is of essence, so it's important to ensure that nobody is caught off guard.
And just finally, Yuriy, I last spoke to you in February on the 3rd anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and you recalled at the time your children asking you in February 2022, Dad, how long is this going to last? And you thought at the time maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months. What do you tell your children now?
That's probably the hardest question so far. I just tell them, be strong. Be strong and have hope and believe in our friends in Europe and the US. And they're old enough to understand that, if we have managed to stand so far, there is strength in the Ukrainian people to continue until we reach just peace and normal life will be resumed.
I hope so. Yuriy Sak, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio. If you'd like to know more about the war in Ukraine, you can subscribe and sign up for a membership. You can also get more analysis by listening to Times Radio or read thetimes.com. But for now, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.